Title: The Uninvited Guest. Sarah was sitting on her couch scrolling through her phone. The clock on the wall read 11:55 p.m. The soft ticking of the clock was the only sound in the room, a sound that felt oddly loud in the silence. Sarah, to herself, "I should really stop working this late." A sudden, soft knock at the door broke the silence. Sarah looked up, startled. She frowned and glanced at the clock again. 11:55 p.m. Sarah. Who could that be this late? She cautiously approached the door, checking the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. She opened the door a crack, peering out into the dark, but saw nothing. Sarah, muttering to herself, "Must be the wind." She closed the door and locked it, trying to shake the unease creeping up her spine. She sat back down on the couch, but the tension in the air only seemed to grow. A few moments passed. Then another knock, louder this time. Sarah. Okay, this is getting creepy. She walked over to the door again, checking the peephole. Once again, no one was there. Her heart raced a little as she opened the door, fully this time. There, on the doorstep, was a small cardboard box. It didn't look like it belonged to her. No name, no address, just a plain, nondescript box. Sarah. What the hell? She bent down and picked it up, glancing around the hallway nervously. No one was in sight. She closed the door behind her and set the box on the table. Sarah. Quietly confused. What is this? She slowly opened the box. Inside, there was a ragged old doll with glassy, lifeless eyes staring back at her. A note was tied to the doll's neck with a piece of string. The handwriting was neat, but it felt wrong. Note: Don't let it leave your sight. Sarah, laughing nervously. Okay, this is a joke, right? But as she looked at the doll, something about it felt off. Its eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. The longer she stared, the more uncomfortable she felt. She shook her head, trying to shake off the weird sensation. She placed the doll on the table and turned to walk away. But as she did, she heard a faint creak, a soft, almost imperceptible sound. She stopped in her tracks and turned around. The doll's head was now tilted slightly, as though it were looking at her. Sarah. Okay? This isn't funny. Her pulse quickened. She glanced around the room nervously. A sudden cold breeze swept through, making her shiver. The lights flickered and she instinctively reached out to steady herself. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, methodical, like someone or something was walking toward her. Sarah, breathing heavily. No! No way! She rushed to the door, flinging it open to find the hallway completely empty. No one. The house was silent once again. She slammed the door shut, her hands trembling as she locked it. Sarah, to herself, panicking. What the hell is going on? Her heart raced as she stood there in the silence, trying to catch her breath. She glanced back at the table where the doll was. Her stomach dropped. The doll had moved. Its arms were now raised, as though reaching for her. Sarah, terrified. No, this isn't happening. She backed away from the table, eyes locked on the doll, her body frozen in fear. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The lights flickered again, then completely went out, plunging the room into darkness. The air grew colder. Sarah could hear her own breathing, fast and shallow. But now there was something else. A whisper. Soft at first, but growing louder. Whisper. Don't look away. Sarah spun around, but there was nothing in the room but shadows. The whisper echoed in her ears. Her heart was pounding now, her fear overwhelming her. Sarah, crying out. What do you want from me? Suddenly, the room was filled with images, quick flashes of old photographs, distorted, fading faces. They were all people who had owned the doll before her. Each one wore a look of terror in their eyes. The photos flickered on the walls, growing faster and more intense until the faces blurred into a nightmarish mass. Sarah. No, 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 no. Desperate, she grabbed the doll and hurled it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, crackling as the doll tumbled into the fire. But just as quickly, the flames began to die, as though the fire had been snuffed out by an unseen force. The room fell silent. The camera lingered on Sarah's face, wide eyes, trembling lips. She slowly turned toward the fireplace, breathing heavily, hoping the nightmare was over. But it wasn't. The doll was back on the table, completely untouched. Its smile was wider now, almost mocking. Doll, whispering Mina.